November will mark 35 years since the longest prison standoff in U.S. history, the 11-day uprising taking place right here in Atlanta's federal penitentiary. And tonight we explain why the riots took place. It's a history lesson that starts with President Jimmy Carter.
I'd like to make a statement to you and to the nation about the extremely critical problem with the Cuban citizens who are escaping from their country and coming to our shores in a very haphazard and dangerous way.
His open arms policy made waves in Cuba's communist government. It sparked mass immigration known as the Mariel boat lift. Cubans arriving by the hundreds to our shores, and Florida was already full.
But when they needed a place to put the Mariel Cubans, it started out as the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary. They kind of got moved in bit by bit.
Around 1,500 Cuban detainees have been shipped off to Atlanta in the 80s.
It just says the judge has discretion.
Attorney Gary LaShaw represented them, saying this was more than an immigration issue.
But the primary issue was you shouldn't hold people in indefinite detention. If they hadn't been convicted of anything, they couldn't be sent back to Cuba.
They were behind bars for years in legal limbo until 1987, when the U.S. government decided it would deport detainees.
And when they heard that there was an agreement to send them back to Cuba, that's when the riots started.
Days before Thanksgiving, they took 100 staffers hostage and told the American prisoners to leave. They locked down the prison to see if they could cut a deal.
Because we want to obtain our liberty.
I was there the first couple of nights with the FBI hostage negotiators. One of the detainees was killed by the guards shooting on the rooftop, and until they got him out, it was hard to make any progress with the Cubans.
I think there's goodwill on both sides.
It turned into a standoff. Detainees fed their hostages turkey for Thanksgiving and thanked the U.S. from the prison rooftop for amplifying their message. The Cubans were clear. They weren't budging. So in December, on behalf of his paralegal, LaShaw asked for a gift.
So he said, why don't you release hostages? And for her birthday, they released one. And towards the end, they called me back in again.
2 days later, the government reached an agreement. Each detainee would get a hearing to determine if they committed a crime that had grounds for deportation.
They took a vote. So everybody had to wait until the votes were in. The ones who were released were supposed to be left alone as long as they obeyed the law and didn't get into trouble.
LaShaw says they were getting due process, as they should. The next day, the nation's longest prison standoff came to an end, with LaShaw's impact written in the aftermath. And that uprising cost about $35 million in damages and sparked changes in the nation's prison system. However, LaShaw also says the real lesson here is that everyone deserves basic human rights.